Tom Cotton. A happy Thanksgiving in advance to you, Senator. I hope that you are planning a wonderful one with your wonderful family.
Hey, Hugh. Happy Thanksgiving to you and all your listeners. You know, listening to that song in anticipation of the big Ohio State-Michigan game reminds me of the last time the game had this many consequences, 10 years ago in 2006, which I watched with all of my soldiers from a tent in Kuwait as we were preparing to return home, which is the 10-year anniversary of our return this past Sunday.
Oh, you know, that had to have been an Ohio State win. Michigan's only won once in the last 12 years.
Yeah,
so
if you remember, they were number 1 and 2, and Ohio State beat Michigan. Of course, they went on to get crushed by Florida, an SEC team, in the national championship.
Now, Senator Cotton, last week I was talking to your good friend Mike Pompeo, and he is your good friend, right?
One of my best friends in the Congress, yes.
Now, Mike Pompeo sat here in this chair on Thursday, and I talked to him about Devin Nunes becoming the CIA director, and like a good spy, Mike Pompeo didn't even crack a smile. Nothing. We've listened to the tape. He was obviously already asked and answered to agree to be the CIA director. First of all, what do you make of the appointment? Secondly, do you think he'll ever come back on the radio now that he's DCIA?
Pretty sneaky of Mike, Hugh.
Yes.
So I think this is one of Donald Trump's best decisions since he was elected. Mike is going to be an outstanding director of the CIA. He serves on the House Intelligence Committee. I serve on the Senate Intelligence Committee. We've worked together closely in those roles. We've traveled the world together on multiple occasions. He also puts in long hours visiting with the people at the CIA and the other intelligence agencies in our government. He cares deeply for the men and women who are out on the front lines in the intelligence world, keeping us safe in the shadows without the kind of recognition that our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marine receive, but sometimes doing work that is just as hard. So I look very much forward to his prompt confirmation and to many years of outstanding leadership at the CIA. Will he come back on your show? I don't know, Hugh. I mean, occasionally the director of the CIA goes out and speaks publicly about the great work that his agency is doing. But I think you may have to be a little bit nicer to him in the future and not say such bad things about his Wichita State Shockers.
I can't do that because they beat Ohio State. But I'll tell you this, I've been counting on him weekly like you, and I don't think we're going to get the DCIA weekly for whatever reason. I just think that's not likely.
Well, why don't you, for the view from the House, why don't you talk to our good friend Mike Gallagher, the new congressman from Green Bay and a Marine, but otherwise a good man.
I think I'm going to have to find, maybe Gallagher will be the new substitute. I always have one House member on. It was Campbell, and then it became Pompeo. Now we got it's like Siege Perilous of Arthurian times. Senator Cotton, I got to ask you, so Pompeo takes himself out, and you've been meeting with Donald Trump. Are you staying in the Senate, or do we have to worry about replacing the senator, the weekly senator as well?
Hugh, we're in one of these periods every 4 or 8 years in Washington's favorite parlor game of speculating who's going to get what job and how. I think it's best that we simply give the president-elect the time he needs to make the choices that are right for the country. His choices so far, in my opinion, have been very sound, and his transition is ahead of where many past presidents-elect have been. So the media hyperventilating is amusing to watch, but we need to give the president-elect the time he needs to make the right choices for himself and for our country.
Speaking of hyperventilating, there is a fake news story on the front page of the New York Times today by Mark Landler and Helene Cooper. I like Helene. I've worked with her on Meet the Press. But the headline is, Trump's focus on generals for top jobs stirs worries over military sway. I have literally not heard one person say that. Have you, Senator Cotton?
I have not, Hugh. There's a long history of former generals and admirals taking jobs in the civilian government. Colin Powell was the Secretary of State for George W. Bush. Jim Jones was a national security advisor for Barack Obama. Eric Shinseki was the Secretary of the VA. With the exception of the Department of Defense, there is a long-standing custom that we recall our general officers back into the civilian government to apply the leadership lessons that they've learned because they're demonstrated public servants and patriots.
Now, I got two more questions for you. One very, very serious. Sashi Brown is your colleague from Harvard Law School. He's the executive vice president of the Browns. You played basketball with him, am I correct?
Yeah, we were on the same Harvard Law School intramural basketball champion team.
So I think your friend Brown ought to be connected with your friend Pompeo to make sure that the Browns have a good draft. I think that's an appropriate use of CIA metrics, don't you?
Hugh, it looks like the Browns are going to be just fine on their own getting that top draft pick.
Well, getting it. I just don't want to blow it. And then finally, General Keane turned down President Obama. Stanley McChrystal, General Kelly, others of these, they may be reluctant to come back in. Do you think you ought to make calls and recruit these guys? Because DHS is just a job that's got to be done right. 30 seconds, Senator Cotton.
He's doing a great job. He's meeting with a lot of people from different viewpoints. John Kelly, Stan McChrystal, and so many other generals are great Americans, and I can't imagine that they won't answer the call to service if it comes.
Thank you, Senator Cotton. We'll talk to you next week. Have a great Thanksgiving.